A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. We are recording this on Friday, September 6th of 2024. You may notice that we're bringing you the podcast on a different date. In coordination with our all-new TV series, True Crime News, we will be releasing the podcast now on Tuesdays, and we will continue to do that. And we hope that you continue to join us. You know what? And if you like, listening to the podcast on Fridays, you can still enjoy it on Fridays. So this week, we are talking about one of the most famous cold cases of the last half century, the brutal murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey in Boulder, Colorado. The little beauty pageant contestant with the larger-than-life personality was found murdered on Christmas of 1996, and to this day, the case remains unsolved, nearly 30 years later. She was sexually assaulted, strangled, and suffered a massive head injury. At the time, JonBenét's murder case made headlines around the world because of the unusual circumstances of the crime and also because the Ramseys themselves were larger than life. Father John Ramsey was a rich and successful businessman who flew in private planes. Mother Patsy was a former beauty queen from the South. The tabloids convicted the parents in the court of public opinion with a lot of help from the Boulder police and the public. The case was originally called into police as a kidnapping. The Ramseys say they woke up to a 3-page ransom note left on their staircase. The letter said they had taken JonBenét and wanted money for her return. The family and police quickly searched the house, but there was no sign of her until hours later when her father checked the basement again and he found her little body wrapped up and concealed. Although years later, prosecutors cleared John and Patsy Ramsey, the stigma of the suspicion lingers. Patsy Ramsey died of cancer years ago, and now John Ramsey is 80 years old, and he wants his daughter's murder solved before he dies. John Ramsey invited me to his home in Utah. No questions were off limits, but he for sure had an agenda. He says there are crucial pieces of evidence, including a murder weapon, that have never been tested for DNA. And despite his pleas to Boulder police to have the evidence tested using new technology that could identify the killer, the Boulder police have not. So John Ramsey has started a petition, and he is hoping that all of you will help him by making a lot of noise and demanding that the evidence be tested. Here's my extended interview with John Ramsey. John, it's lovely to finally meet you after all these years.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for inviting us into your home.
Well, it's my pleasure.
How are you doing?
Well, good. Good. Yeah, we're doing good.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to relive that day, that horrible day.
Yeah.
But John, in the almost 30 years that have passed, where are you in the investigation into JonBenét's murder?
I don't know where we are, quite honestly. We started early on when we realized the Boulder police were not capable, and I've never criticized them for that. I've criticized them for refusing help from people who were capable. Denver police offered 2 homicide detectives immediately to come work for Boulder full-time because they knew they didn't have a homicide department. They refused it, and they refused help for years. And that's been the most frustrating thing. So we don't know, frankly, if we're very much further ahead than we were 30 years ago.
In the court of public opinion, John and Patsy Ramsey and Big Brother Burke were quickly convicted. After all, John had found the child's body in the basement of their Boulder, Colorado home 7 hours after she was reported missing. You can hear the terror in JonBenét's mother's voice as she calls 911 after finding the ransom note.
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please.
Explain to me what's going on, okay?
There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter?
6 years old. She's gone.
The 911 call was analyzed and dissected and pulled apart by Boulder police, who said they never believed JonBenét had been kidnapped. And ultimately, they were right. JonBenét hadn't been kidnapped. She had been murdered, and her body was in the basement of the Ramsey home. Police thought the kidnapping was a hoax to cover up the murder, and the parents were suspected. So from the very beginning, the police suspected you and your wife, Patsy, of killing JonBenét.
Yeah. I was advised, I got a call like the next day, and I wasn't taking calls, but the family we were staying with then said, hey, this is a fellow that works with you. He said it's urgent, he talks to you. So I got on the phone. He said, I got a call from inside the system. Don't know who that was. Said, get this message to John. Tell him to get the best defense attorney he can get his hands on because the police think he killed his daughter and they're out to get him. And I was like, unbelievable. And but I didn't do anything about it. I was just shocked. And I was not really capable of doing much.
John, do you believe that the police department were so focused on you and your wife as the suspects that they weren't out there looking for the killers?
Absolutely. I believe that. We would get calls from people with information, our attorneys would, and they'd say, look, it's very typically, I try to call the police, I've got information, I think it could be useful, they won't call me back. I want to give this information to somebody. So I'm calling you as the Ramsey attorneys. I could get John, but it was very clear that they were 100% focused on us. In fact, the so-called detective that came that morning had never done this before. And I read her report, and it was quite bizarre. She went on national television and said, well, I know it was the father because I saw it in his eyes. I thought, well, that's a very valuable talent you have there. You ought to be working for the FBI if you can do that. But she made observations in her report that would cause you to think, well, he isn't acting right. What she didn't know was 2 years before my oldest daughter was killed in a car accident, I got a call, Beth is gone. I was devastated, but I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't get her to the best doctors. I couldn't go to her bedside. It was over. It was done. I could get JonBenét back if I kept my wits about me. There was a pile of letters that had come through the door, the slot in the door on the floor. I started going through the letters, see if there's any other communication from the kidnapper.
Because at this point, you believe that JonBenét has been kidnapped. Yeah, you don't know that she's dead.
No. And so I'm thinking, is there another letter here, note or something from the kidnapper? I was going through the mail. She said, Jan, in her report, said John was acting suspicious. He was going through the mail casually. She should have been doing that.
JonBenét's mouth had been duct taped, and there were ligatures around her wrists and her neck. The medical examiner ruled JonBenét was killed by strangulation in combination with a skull fracture. The murder weapon was unique, a garrote made of nylon cord and a paintbrush, and that was used to strangle her. She was also sexually assaulted. In April of 1997, a year after burying their daughter, the Boulder District Attorney announced Patsy and John Ramsey were the focus of the investigation. Forensic DNA was in its infancy then compared to the technology available now, but John says some evidence was never tested at all. So it's believed that there are at least 7 items which are considered critical evidence that have never been tested.
To our knowledge, that's correct. These items were sent originally in January 1997 to the lab for testing, were returned untested.
Okay, and one of those items, which is critical, is the garrote used to strangle JonBenét.
Yeah.
It is very hard to look at this and not believe that it is covered with evidence.
You know, DNA, I've learned a lot about DNA, and it's complicated, but it's also very difficult not to leave it behind.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it's got to be there.
But if this was you know, if this is one of the weapons that was used to kill JonBenét, how do you not test it for DNA? This is the part I don't get.
Well, I don't know why they didn't test it in the beginning, and to my knowledge, it still hasn't been tested. If they're testing it and just not telling me, that's great, but I have no reason to believe that.
Okay. Another piece of evidence which you understand not to have been tested, the suitcase that was under the windowsill
Right.
in the basement.
Well, yeah, when the so-called detective that was there that morning, the only person that was there, said, go through the house and see if you find anything unusual, out of place. Well, that was bingo, big time out of place. That suitcase should not have been under the window with the window open.
Right. It is believed that whoever climbed in or out stood on the suitcase
Yeah.
and then crawled through the window.
Yeah, and the window is broken, and I told the I'll call her detective, I said, look, I broke that window last summer. It may not have ever been fixed, I don't know. So maybe it was broken by me, but that suitcase doesn't belong there, and the window should not have been wide open.
Is it true that JonBenét's nightgown was in the suitcase?
Apparently, with
Why would it be in the suitcase?
no reason at all.
Is this even your suitcase? Do you know what this is?
Yeah, it's been so long ago, I don't know if that was our suitcase or not. It didn't, all I saw was that should not have been there.
Right. It looks completely out of place.
Exactly.
Okay. So,
And I told the police officer that morning, I said, look, the window's open. It shouldn't have been open. It was broken. I may have broken it a year ago. It never got fixed. I don't know. But it sure shouldn't have. That suitcase should not have been there, and the window should not have been open.
how could the ransom note not have been tested for DNA? That in itself should be a crime, at least a moral crime.
Well, there's lots of moral crimes in this case. You know, I've said there's two tragedies. One for us is the loss of our child, which is the overwhelming one. But the second is the way the police handled the case.
There was another item. I'm just going to list the 7. The garrote handle, the ransom note, the suitcase under the window, the unknown flashlight
Yep.
that was left on the kitchen counter,
Yep.
the rope found in John Andrews' bedroom,
Yep.
the black duct tape, and
Yep.
then the Dr. Seuss book, which was in the suitcase.
Yeah.
Not tested.
As far as I know, never tested. That stuff was all sent to the lab in January 1997 and returned untested.
As an investigative reporter, I wish everything could be tested.
Yeah.
But if you can't test everything, there are some things that have to be tested, like the murder weapon has got to be tested.
Yeah.
Like there's no way around that.
Right. No, it makes no sense. Well, nothing made sense in the way this case was handled.
So, John, we were talking about the flashlight.
Yeah.
So this isn't your flashlight.
What I told the police was, I have a flashlight like that, but it's not dirty. It's not covered with dust and crud. And so I said, that's not my flashlight. I have one that's very like it, but not mine. And what was it doing in the kitchen counter? Our neighbor said they saw a flashlight late at night in the kitchen going around.
So then there are other pieces of evidence which haven't been tested in almost 3 decades, and technology has changed so significantly.
Yep.
So I would hope that the long sleeve shirt that JonBenét had, that would be retested.
Yeah, what we would like is that not only the stuff that had been tested 15 years ago be retested and resampled, but all the stuff that has never been tested, as far as we know, needs to be tested for the first time. Or sampled, rather.
Because according to this evidence list, they should still have the ligatures from JonBenét's neck and wrists, and that should hold some DNA evidence. It could potentially.
Sure. It's very difficult, I've learned from studying it, to not leave DNA behind.
The DNA technology at the time identified the DNA of an unknown male under the child's fingernails and on her underpants. That massive clue officially cleared the Ramseys, but it didn't answer who that DNA belonged to because the science wasn't there yet. But today, it's possible that DNA could identify that person with these modern advances. With so many theories out there, do you have a theory about what happened to JonBenét?
Well, I relied on two experts. One was John Douglas, who was probably the premier crime profiler in our country. He said, this is someone who was angry at you, John, or very jealous of you. It had nothing to do with JonBenét. And I said, man, I've never made anybody, I don't think, angry at me. In fact, John Douglas said, you may not even know this person, but they're either extremely angry at you for some reason or they're jealous of you for some reason, and they've hurt JonBenét or hurt you. Lou Smith, who's solved over 200 homicides, said this was what it was. It was a kidnapping gone wrong. Pure and simple, in his judgment. And the two, I always thought the two were conflicting, but they're really not. As somebody explained to me, so those aren't mutually exclusive theories. And I was like, yeah, you're right, they're not. So I think it was somebody that wanted to hurt me or a family. Obviously a very evil, pure evil creature that would do this to a child. In fact, I asked our attorney, I said, could someone have hired somebody to do this? They said, no, you can't hire anybody to murder a child. The world's not that bad. And the other thing they told me, they said, look, if this person's caught, the prosecutor will come to you and say, do you want us to go after the death penalty or life imprisonment? They said it won't matter. This person will not survive 2 weeks in prison because what he did was so below the lowest human being morals that the other prisoners will kill him. There was a similar situation 9 months later in our neighborhood. A parent had come home, gone to bed, set the alarm, and heard a noise in their daughter's bedroom, went in, found a man in her bedroom, and he fled. And at the time, I thought, man, that is so similar to what I think happened in our case. I think the creature was in our house when we came home. We didn't have an alarm, or we didn't set it. This family set the alarm, so the person had to be in the house when the alarm was set because he didn't trigger it. And I thought, that ought to be looked at seriously as the same guy. Well, the police blew it off. I said, nah, it's not the same.
So in the other attack that was thwarted, did the police gather any type of forensic evidence?
I'm told that they took the sheets off the bed and destroyed them. Now, that's not 100% verifiable, or I didn't verify it, but the father of that child, and in fact, these two, JonBenét and this little girl, were in the same dance class in Boulder, so they knew each other. And it was, a few blocks away from our home. And I was like, if this isn't the same guy.
He's got a brother.
He's got a brother, exactly. The same detectives investigated their case, blew it off. The father was irate. In fact, he was interviewed by the paper, and he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate the police capabilities as a -5.
Despite the fact that this is an old and cold case, there's a considerable amount of physical evidence still in custody.
We hope so. We hope they haven't lost it. we've been advocating. We know that there was a number of items sent to Bodie Labs, which is a DNA lab, early in the investigation. Several were, this was like in early January, several were tested, and the report back to the police was John, Patsy, and Burke are excluded. There is unidentified male DNA that we've sampled. That was a report that came back in the middle of January. They said which items had been tested. Well, we knew that only a few of the items they sent to the lab were tested. There were still 6 or 8 pieces that were taken from the crime scene they felt had potential DNA evidence on them, were not tested. And we don't know why. Was it a cost issue? Did they think, well, they already had a DNA result, so why test this other stuff? It was expensive in the 90s to test for DNA. Don't know, but they weren't tested. So we've advocated for strongly that those items be tested.
All the items be tested.
All the items.
Because you have two situations here. You have the original evidence that was tested using old technology.
In 1997.
And then you have other evidence that has never been tested.
Correct.
That's a lot. The universe, the potential universe of finding the killer's DNA is sizable, I think.
I think it is. And the police, we've gone through 5 police chiefs in Boulder. I've met with each new one at my request and advocated this. We would like untested items be tested and then use the familial DNA research capability, which has had marvelous results in old cases, to find the killer. We're not asking you to clear us or apologize or be nice to us again. Just do the things that you should do that can be done. If you do that and we don't get an answer, we tried. We did everything we could do. That's all we're asking. What the police say, as recently as a few months ago, well, we don't think the DNA technology is advanced enough to do that. We don't want to destroy the DNA. That's nonsense.
I agree. It is
absolute nonsense. My worry is that they've lost the evidence or misplaced it, and they don't have it anymore. Therefore, they can't test it. I hope I'm wrong.
That would be really horrible if that's true.
Yeah, and I hope it's wrong. But
that would be devastating if that were true.
It would be.
So is it possible that some of the evidence could be being tested right now?
Possible. We don't know. They won't tell us anything.
Because if you were truly clever, you wouldn't say a word, and you would be testing everything right now without anyone knowing.
And I hope that's what they're doing. And I understand why, and they're doing the right thing. Lou Smith, who was this legendary detective that was retired, brought in out of retirement to work on our case, he wouldn't talk to the media. He said, that's not my job. My job is to find the killer. And he said, I'm the only person that can stand in JonBenét's shoes. And that's how he looked at his job. And he was an amazing man. Solved over 200 homicides, many of them cold cases during a career.
What I don't understand about this cold case unit, doesn't the cold case unit have the authority to say this evidence needs to get tested this way?
Well, that was their recommendation, I'm told. I had not seen their report. They don't have the authority to make it happen. That case is still under the control of the Boulder Police Department.
And you want to get it out of there?
That's been our goal for 30 years. Or at least accept help that's been offered over the years from people that knew what they were doing.
I've heard you ask many times to have the evidence turned over to the FBI.
Well, we would like that to happen at a minimum. If you're not going to turn over authority of the case, at least turn the evidence over to the FBI. Let them play with it, do what they can do. But don't just keep it locked in a file drawer. If it's there, hopefully it's there. And then we think the FBI would do something. I don't know what, but at least it's a competent agency. And they've expressed some interest in this case.
John, I sense in talking with you that you're still defending against those who believe that you may have killed your daughter?
Yeah. Well, we have we've done a lot of media now once we were allowed to do it. But the main reason we were doing it was not to prove our innocence or convince people that we were not child killers, but was to keep pressure on the police. And so our whole objective is to get the case into competent hands. And we've been trying to do that for 29 years.
John, how do you think people still perceive you and your family?
I think it's a mix. I mean, we've been overwhelmed by people that have apologized to us for what's been done to us and what's been said about us. And then we're grateful for that. It's really uplifting. And I'm sure there's a cadre of people that still think we're horrible, child murdering people. They're always going to be there. There's still people that believe that the moon landing was fake and that Elvis is alive in Boca Raton. They're always going to be there. So, and it's not a big deal. My goal right now has really become to get an answer as to who did this for the sake of my family, for my children, their children. This is a cloud that still hangs over our family, and it's not fair. It's not right, but it's there. And that it's not going to change my life. In fact, it's going to be very difficult to go through a trial for me emotionally. I know that. But obviously I want to. But we need to close this chapter for my family, my future family's sake, for their future. Because it's not fair for them to have to live under that cloud.
Do you think that through the lens of time, that when we look at what happened to you and your family, that you were treated in a way that really no family gets treated like that anymore?
Well, I think there were two reasons that and sadly, the U.S. has a pretty high child murder homicide rate compared to other industrialized countries. Ours became basically international news, for which I'm grateful that the world cares about my child. Because there's lots of parents that don't have that.
A lot of murder cases don't get the attention
No.
that this case has gotten.
And so I'm grateful that the world cares about JonBenét. I really am. And it's heartwarming. And it helps our cause because the government's reactive. They don't do things proactively. They react to pressure. And we want to keep as intense a pressure we can on the police, primarily, because they still are the authority of this case, to do the right thing. If they don't succumb to pressure and do the right thing, it won't be solved.
Why do you think so many people have been fascinated with this case?
Don't know for sure. I really don't.
Do you think that part of it was seeing JonBenét in her little pageant outfit?
Well, that made good TV for sure. And it was just a small part of JonBenét's life. Patsy and her did it for fun. Patsy was in the Miss America pageant. She said, I knew I would never win. I couldn't sing, but it was a fun experience. And I got a scholarship. And JonBenét was Miss Extrovert, just like her mother. Like, ta-da, I'm here. Let's get on with it. And she caught wind of that history of her mother, and Patsy I dated Patsy for 2 years and never even knew that. Wasn't a big deal to her, just part of what she did, when she was younger. But JonBenét wanted to do that. It'd be fun. And so Patsy had just recovered from stage 4 ovarian cancer. She was in remission. I'm quite certain she knew her life may not go on for another 50 years. And so she wanted to pack as much mother-daughter time in what she knew she had left as she could. And I used to tell JonBenét, look, it doesn't matter if you're the prettiest or whatever. You work on your talent. Each one of these little, Patsy being in the Miss America thing was all about talent. When she did it, it was like 45% of the judging was on your talent. And so any little pageant JonBenét did had a talent portion. She sang. And it was always with gusto, but it wasn't always on tune or, on key. But boom, it was out there. And I used to tell her, we work on your talent. That's what counts. And we said to ourselves, Patsy and I, look, JonBenét needs to not win some of these pageants, because she needs to understand you don't always win in life. And so that's how we approached it.
John, when you speak about JonBenét, it's like she's in the room.
Well,
it's like this joy.
Yeah, well, I think about her every day. I have her picture on my cell phone. I just got a reminder that she's with me in some way that I don't understand, can't comprehend.
John says he wants this case solved to get justice for his daughter and to clear his family name. I believe that there is a lot of goodwill to get this case solved.
There is. It's an amazing amount of goodwill. I've been overwhelmed by people that care about it. And they're like, why won't the police do this stuff? I don't know. And if they're doing it and keeping it quiet, that's fine. I'm okay with that, because they had an open door policy early on with the tabloids and everybody else, and that's why the thing spiraled out of control in terms of information. But that was their intent. They wanted to bring pressure on Patsy and I, but they perpetuated it in the media. It was a juicy story.
But you paid the price for that, John. You and
Patsy.
We
did. Yeah, our family was destroyed.
How do you find the strength? Because you seem so positive and so optimistic.
Well, I've learned from just seeing other families that have lost a child that two things potentially highly likely will happen. One, there'll be a divorce because you'll blame one or the other. You shouldn't have given Johnny the keys to the car that night, or you shouldn't let him go out, play after dark. This is blame. And then there's also you've grieved over the lost child, and don't realize you still probably have other children that need you now to be strong more than ever. We still had 3 wonderful children that we loved dearly, and they were hurt deeply, and they needed us to be strong. That got us off the floor, not immediately, but as soon as we could. Patsy and I used to call them pity parties, and fortunately one of us would be up, the other down, and we'd balance it out, and then it'd be the other way around, we'd balance it out, and anytime we both got down, it's like, okay, let's not have a pity party here. Let's get on with it. And we recognized that we needed to live as parents, strong parents for our other children. Yes, JonBenét was gone. We believe she was in heaven. I know she is. We have 3 other children now that need us to be strong. And as I said earlier, that's really my primary motive for getting this chapter closed, finding the killer. It's not going to change my life.
Do you feel the pressure of time because you are getting older?
To some degree, but my oldest son, John Andrew, has taken up the cause and the baton, and he has been aggressive in pushing the police and the DA and the FBI. He's met with all these people, the governor's office. He's in their face, and he's well-spoken. He's not going away.
I want to thank John Ramsey for inviting me into his home and sitting down to share some very painful memories. JonBenét Ramsey deserves justice, and testing the evidence for DNA could solve this murder. And if the cost is the issue, John Ramsey says he will pay for it so no taxpayer money is used. With an offer like that, how could the Boulder police say no? If you believe the evidence should be tested and you want to make your voice heard, we will have a link to the petition on YouTube in the description box. And leave a comment on YouTube or at My True Crime News on all our social media. Now with True Crime News, the TV show airing daily nationwide, we will be bringing you more interviews like this. Follow me at Anna G News or find us at My True Crime News. Check out all our other episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to True Crime News, the YouTube channel, and sign up to receive our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. So until next week, I'm your host, Anna Garcia. This is True Crime News, the podcast. And as we always say, don't do crime.